Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to Iron Anchor Cycles. Well, I hope you guys have been enjoying this video series so far. I'm really excited for the progress we've made to this point, and we are nearing the finish line. We've got basically one more, call it bigger project to do, and then just a whole bunch of little button-up stuff, and this bike is gonna be done. So, this video is gonna be that one big project, and I assume if you watched the last video, you know what this one's gonna be about, and also you probably saw it in the title and the thumbnail, but we're doing a chain kit on this bike. So obviously I'm right now kind of live and we're about to get started on this work, but we actually already did the disassembly on the primary. So I'm gonna put that footage in here. We'll show you guys the primary coming apart, and then we'll jump back in with getting the install started, which we're gonna do right now. So stick around and we'll get a chain kit installed on this Dyna. All right, so with our disassembly and cleaning all done, we are ready to get going with getting this chain kit installed. And all of that disassembly that we did and all the digging we've got to do to get to this point is all done so that we can get this sprocket installed onto the transmission output shaft. And the installation of the sprocket is a pretty simple process all by itself, but obviously you got a lot of work to get to this point. So one of the things you want to make sure you do while you're here, it's not a common scenario to have the inner primary removed from the bike. You want to make sure you deal with anything else that might need to be dealt with while you're here so you don't have to do this again. So sort of looking at everything, one thing you want to make sure you do is pull the rotor off here and get a look at the stator and make sure nothing looks weird in there. Obviously, you'd want to know and make sure your charging system is working before you get to this point, because obviously if you've got to do a stator, now's the time to do it. As far as I know, the charging system was working on this bike, and looking at the stator, I already pulled the rotor off and looked at it. It looks perfect, so nothing for us to worry about here. Moving over here is where you're more likely to find something you might need to do. So depending on the year of the bike, there are a number of seals that exist here. In the case of this bike, we've got a seal behind the shifter lever. We've got a large main seal here. And then we've got the fifth gear seal, which sits behind this race for the primary bearing. Now, a little full disclosure for you, nothing was leaking on this part of this, but we did suspect a leak behind here. And we can see that from the evidence of oil buildup here. We pulled this lever off and looked underneath. There's a snap ring and a washer, and behind that is the seal. Pull that snap ring and washer off. If you see oil back there, it's a pretty good indication that this is leaking. So we actually already went ahead and changed that one. So I'm sorry we didn't film that, but we just got busy and things got away from us and we were trying to multitask. So that one's already done. But we do have something else we need to address here, even though we don't have a leak. And let me zoom in and I'll show you what I'm going to talk about here. All right, so as I mentioned, this is the race for the primary bearing, and this is what we want to take a closer look at. Now, if you look at this race, there's always going to be some degree of wear on it. In this case, it's very minimal, can't feel anything, it's nothing to worry about. However, the bigger issue with these is that on some bikes, and this isn't necessarily the case on all of them, but certainly the earlier twin cam bikes like this one, this race has a tendency to walk in towards the transmission. So hopefully you can see here, there's a gap between the race and kind of the threads on the end of the sort of spindle nose here. That gap is very important. If for no other reason, then that's the gap you need to remove this race. if this race walks all the way in and closes that gap, you've got a problem. Not that this race can't be taken off, but it gets to be an issue. If you're in that situation where this race walks all the way in, you've got basically 3 choices depending on the bike. Number 1, which is the least desirable outcome, is you can cut the race. It can be done, but I've seen a lot of bikes where people have tried to do this and you wind up with gouges in the transmission output shaft, and you absolutely don't want that. Number 1, it weakens it and it's just a problem. But number 2, it can be a source of a leak. It can also be a source of this bearing walking again. You reduce the surface area that this friction fit is sitting on, and you're just asking for more problems down the road. So you don't want to be cutting into parts that are going to stay on the bike. The next option is on some bikes, when you open the transmission bearing housing, you're actually able to move the whole assembly a little bit. I'm not going to get too far into that. It takes a little bit of doing, but it can be done where you can basically slide this so that you can give yourself a little bit more room. It's not a great procedure, but it is an option on certain bikes. And the issue with it is that tightening the nut back up on the other side requires you to lock this in place, which can be done by removing the top cover. But again, it's a complicated procedure. The final option is you have to pull the transmission out of the case to do this and disassemble the whole thing if that gap gets closed. So basically, you need enough of a gap here in order to get the removal tool in. And so it's pretty thin. There's not a lot that sits back there. But you can see in this case, it almost doesn't want to go in, but it does. So at this point, it's clear that this race has walked, and we want to nip this problem in the bud and not let it get any worse. The other thing is, on these bikes, and I'm going to give you a year range here. I think it'll say it on here. It won't. I don't know what the year range is, but I'll put it up on the screen for you right now. There is an upgraded solution that eliminates this problem entirely. And what that is a one-piece bearing that comes from gyms. And so I'll open this up and show you. Basically just looks like a sealed wheel bearing. So what's going to happen here is this bearing is going to get pressed into the primary, just like the roller bearing for this would. But instead of this race being separate and getting pressed onto the shaft, the inner race is part of the bearing here, and it's a slip fit onto the shaft. Now, that does create a slight challenge, which is solved by the fact that the GYM's bearing comes with a different style of seal. So the other seal is going to seal around the outer edge where the race is here. This is going to seal on the inside, if that makes sense. So the fact that it's a slip fit, it doesn't have to be oil tight because this seal comes in here as opposed to being all the way out here. Hopefully that makes sense. So long story short, we are going to remove this race right now, and we're not going to have to put a new one on because we've got the one-piece bearing upgrade. So definitely something that's worth doing on the bikes that it's applicable for, particularly if the bearing is already walked. So we're going to deal with that. Now, the removal of this can be slightly challenging. There are, pretty good instructions that come with the GYM's tool, but basically you have a limited amount of torque that you're allowed to put on here onto this tool. And if you're not able to get it to move with that amount of torque, and I believe it's 50 foot-pounds, but I'll confirm that when I get the tool set up, you need to start applying some heat to this race in order to get it to expand a little bit so that it can be pulled off. You don't want to put too much heat. There's a limit on that too, because you'll start damaging seals and other things, and you don't want to make a bigger problem than you had to begin with. Like I said, there's a little seal back here, and too much heat is going to damage that. Now, more often than not, if we wind up putting heat into this race, we're going to wind up changing that seal. Some might argue that as long as you're here, it makes sense to change all the seals. I disagree with that logic. If you've got a seal that's good and functional and working and there's no leaks, I don't necessarily see the logic in changing something that's working. Now, look, seals do wear and they get dried out and things like that, and eventually they'll start to leak. But there's just a lot of things on a Harley where it's better to leave well enough alone, and I think this is one of them. So the only other seal here is this one, and it's a very easy one to change. So it's not like I'm trying to cop out of any type of labor or anything like that, but it's really just, I really do think it's better off leaving it in place if it's not leaking. So that's what we're gonna do. This one we probably won't change. If we wind up putting heat in this, we probably will change it. And also we'll get a better look at it once this race is out of the way. If it looks like it might need to be changed, we'll change it then too. So this one's kind of a pain to do, but I've got a little trick that makes it a little bit easier. So let's get going. Let me get the tool set up and we'll see how easy or difficult it is to get this off. All right, ready to get this done. Let's get the tool installed. And I'm just making sure that these bolts are threaded in evenly, so that feels good. And I'm gonna snug our tool down here. All right, so I'm gonna hold one half of the tool here with a crescent wrench, and then I'll turn the bolt with a socket. Now, I think, in my opinion anyway, the safest way to make sure you're not going to exceed the force, which is 50 foot-pounds, I was correct, is just to use a torque wrench. And obviously, we don't have to use this the whole way. Once it starts moving, we know that we're not going to go over that force. It's just a matter of kind of breaking it free. So I'm going to tighten this down, and we'll see how it goes. So hopefully, I just want to make sure I'm totally in view here on the camera. I don't want you to miss what I'm doing. All right, no big deal. It's already moving. Beautiful. It was like 20 foot-pounds, didn't do anything. All right, so that's great news. No heat, no nonsense, beautiful. So I'm just gonna switch to a ratchet and we'll keep turning this until the race just pops off. All right, there we go. All right, so there's our race removed. And get a look at our output shaft. Looks a little dirty in here, and we're definitely gonna clean this up, but can't feel anything with my fingernail. Feels pretty good. So, looking at this seal here, there's definitely some kind of crud that's built up. You can kind of see it there on my finger maybe, from road debris, but it's not actually up on the lip of the seal. So, I would say it's probably safe to say that this seal is fine, but just because we're here and I don't know, might be worth showing you the trick to do this. Maybe I'll change this one. So let's do that. This one's questionable. Questionable means change it, I think is the best course of action. This one we're gonna leave. So let me, oops, just kicked the camera. So let me grab what I need to do the removal and installation on this seal, and we will be right back. All right, I'm ready to get this seal taken out. I got the shaft cleaned up here, just hit it with a Scotch-Brite. I'm definitely gonna wanna do that before you put the new seal on so you don't damage it, but figured I might as well do it now. So we're gonna go ahead and take this seal out. Now, my favorite method for removing a seal, I don't think works super well on these. And the way I like to do that, like with a bigger one like this, or even with these, I like to drill a hole, put a screw in it, and use a little slide hammer to pull them out. I find that works really well, and you reduce your risk of damaging, well, anything a lot by doing that. So we'll see how easy or hard this one is to get out. Sometimes you can just kind of grab it with a pick and work it out. Other times you really have to kind of get in there and pry on it. So we obviously want to make sure, absolutely certainly, that we do not damage either side of where this seal is sitting, because obviously we'll create a leak if we do that. So we just want to be real careful. So I'm just gonna go in, I'll try a couple different picks and whatever, and we'll see what works. One pick bent. Start to keep count, I think. All right, making progress. There we go. All right. All right. So there's our seal. So you can see it's just very thin. There's very little pry on here. But what we managed to do, obviously, was not cut through this. So we definitely didn't damage the outside here. And I was prying up towards where the inside of the seal is so we don't damage the inside. So sometimes can take a little doing, but there it is. All right, so get this cleaned out and show you how to put the new seal on. All right, ready to go ahead and get the new seal put in. I've got it over here. Pretty simple. So first thing I'm gonna do is put some electrical tape over the splines here to protect the seal as it goes on. All right, so with that out of the way, pretty straightforward. We're gonna slide the seal over this after lubricating it, and we're gonna drive it in here. Now, the best way to do that is, if you've got the tool to remove the bearing that's in the way of that seal, and you're gonna have to have that tool in order to do that, you're gonna have the install tool as well. So basically, this goes on here, little driver, and it's gonna take the new race and drive it on. Now, this is the tool you're gonna use to install that seal. But if you were to think that you could just use this tool and drive the seal in with this tool on the seal like this, you'd be wrong. This is too big, it's not gonna work. I know maybe there's some misconception out there that that's a possibility, but it's not. That's not gonna work. However, you already have the tool you need to install that seal, and the tool that you need is your old race. If you save your old race and you hone it out a little bit, you can open it up so that it's, rather than being an interference fit on here, it'll be a slip fit. I've already done that on one that I've got, and I save it in my box here. I just put a little white line on it so I know not to throw it away. Just came in here and opened this up a little bit so that this will slide on. I've got tape in the way here, unfortunately. I went a little too far with it, but there we go. So this will slide here rather than be an interference fit, and this is the exact right size to line up right on where you want to drive that seal, and it'll allow you to push the seal below flush, which is where that seal sits. So it gets right in line there. It's just below flush. So that's all you need. Really simple. Just use your old race, clean it up a little bit, and it'll be able to slide on there. So that's what we're gonna do. No special craziness required. So let me lubricate the seal, we'll put it on. Right. I think that's probably pretty good. Fortunately, this isn't a one-shot deal. We can back this off, take a look at it, and if we want to push it in further, we can push it in further. Just don't go too far, because you can't undo that. All right. That looks pretty good to me. We are just below flush, which is exactly what I was looking for. And we just slide all this stuff off. And that's it. It's that easy. Just gotta wipe away a little bit of that blue junk that came off there when we pressed it in. And we're good to go. So I'll get reset up and we'll get our sprocket put on. All right, well, got all our prep work done. Let's go ahead and get a sprocket put on here. So first step, take sprocket, put sprocket on. There we go. All right, sprocket's seated down. Go ahead and get the nut put on. So I'm gonna do a couple of things here. We obviously cleaned these threads really well. Same thing for the nut. I'm gonna put red Loctite in here. And I'm gonna put a little bit of assembly lube on the back side of this. Not a lot. I don't want it getting in the threads, but just got a better tightening there. All right. So we'll slide that on. Whoops. All right. Reverse thread, obviously. All right. All right. We'll take our big old socket here. Thread on the stabilizer. And we'll start to get this tightened down. The other thing I'm going to do is get our 9-finger tool in here. This is going to hold the sprocket from turning. So we slide it on like this. And when we turn this, it will hold the sprocket in place. All right, so our goal here is to go to 50 foot-pounds. Turn this on first. And then after we get 50 foot-pounds, we're gonna attempt to get another 30 to 40 degrees out of it, although I'm almost never able to actually do that. Right. All right, so there's our 50. And now I'm going to reset the torque wrench to angle mode and attempt to get a 30-degree at least turn out of this. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Well, that hurt. Well, before that popped off, I got to 28 degrees, and that's an equivalent of, what did it say, 200 and something foot-pounds? So I'm gonna say we're good. I don't know. That happens to me every single time. Before we had the locking tool for the chain sprocket, did what everyone else did and just, put the impact gun on here and just went to town. I know the Harley book. I mean, they all say the same thing, 50 foot-pounds and then 30 to 40 degrees. I don't know how you get 30 to 40 degrees out of it. I mean, 28 degrees was close. But damn, like I don't know. I don't know how you're supposed to do that. But maybe one of you guys know, but I've never been able to do it, ever. So let's hope that our lock plate lines up, because we're certainly not going to be able to tighten that any more than it is. Let's see what we got here. All right, no good there. Boom, that's going to work. All right, so got our 2 bolts cleaned up. I'm going to throw those in and get them torqued down. All right, there's our chain sprocket installed. Good to go. Time to move on to getting the chain done. All right, good morning. I know I said we're gonna get this chain put on, but I've got another step I wanna do first. So we are gonna be running different shocks on this bike, and they are slightly, significantly, moderately lower than what these are. I think these are 15s, which are super high. Obviously you can see by the giant fender gap here. When we set the chain, I want to be able to set the chain tension correctly. And you might ask, well, couldn't we just put it on and then set the chain tension once we put the lower shocks on? The answer is yeah, but I don't want to get in a situation where we set the length, cut the length of the chain wrong and wind up not being where we want to be in terms of the adjustment. So I think it's better to do the shocks now, get the bike at the right height, and we'll be able to get the chain set up 100% when we do the install. So the reason I was holding off on doing the shocks is I do have the shocks, and we're going to put them on right now. What I don't have is the replacement hardware. So it was back ordered. We got a really nice ARP stud and bolt kit. It comes from Ramjet. They were delayed with polishing, I think. So that finally shipped, and it's coming in a couple days. I was trying to avoid having to do this twice, but so what I think I'm going to do is just say, doesn't matter, I'll do it twice, it's no big deal. We just won't do a final install on the shocks. I'll just get them on there and get it to the right height. Won't torque anything, won't worry about if the alignment is exactly right. Just got to get the bike to sit at the right height. So that's what I'm going to do. So first step is going to be to get these guys taken off. All right, shocks taken off on both sides. We've got to get these upper mounts removed, not just because we are going to be using upgraded hardware, but because the Legend shocks won't work with the 05 and earlier Dyna upper mounting hardware here. You've got to replace it to something else. There are some options. Legend gives some instructions in there, or gives some information in their instructions. I don't actually think it's correct. It's definitely doable, but you're gonna have to figure out what you gotta do. So we'll get more into that when we actually do the final install on the shocks, but for now, suffice it to say, we're just gonna take these off on both sides. All right, with everything removed, take a look at our shocks. Maybe this comes as a surprise. This is the shock we're running, maybe not. I guess the decision factor here was probably that Legend offers customizable stickers, and Jeff opted to go with a purple logo on here to match the bike. We don't do a ton of Legends on the bikes we normally do. Usually Öhlins is our first choice, RWD a second, some others we've done in the past. Not necessarily anything wrong with a Legend product, it's just not our normal go-to. But anyway, I think these are gonna work perfectly, certainly for what he's doing, so we're gonna get them put on. So what we're gonna do to mount this up, basically I've got some of the Legend spacers here, and then basically I've just got a big bolt. I think this is gonna line up pretty well. This is similar to what we would do in a situation where we have to get rid of that factory hardware. Just basically create something, but there are some other options. I'll show you that later, like I said. But anyway, let's go ahead and throw this on here and see what it looks like. Would help if I put the hardware in. Oh, no, that was the right way. All right, so we're looking for something like that, and I'll get this lowered down a little bit. All right, that looks about right there. You can see that's a pretty significant drop. I think this bike looks a whole bunch better already without that huge gap under the fender. I like a little bit of gap, not too much though. So I'm gonna take the original bolt from the bottom, a couple spacers, and we just wanna see if we can thread that in. Oh, looks like we gotta go a little further down. There we go. All right, so not that it matters in the slightest, but I did mess around with the spacers on the other side just to get it to sit straighter. It really doesn't matter, but I don't know. I guess I'm just anal like that. So I'm gonna do the same thing on this side that I did on that side, which was a combination like this, other way. Okay. That on, I did a washer here, and a nut here. All right, let's get some hardware on the bottom. Hopefully everything lines up. Throw that in. All right. All right, hardware snugged, shocks are on. Let's move back over to the other side and we'll finally start to get this chain installed. All right, chain time. So this is the chain we're using, DID. This is their MX2 series chain, best one they make. Definitely will stand up to anything you can throw at it. They're not cheap, but they definitely get the job done. So this one doesn't always show the right color on the outside of the box, but this is actually in fact a gold chain. That's what we're doing on this, customer choice. So let me get this unpackaged and we'll start to lay the chain in place and look at getting it cut to the right length. Okay, so I've got this kind of initially laid out and you can see we've got quite a bit of slack here. But that's about kind of where it sits based on the position of the axle. The axle is roughly where we'd ideally want it to be, which is kind of centered here in the swing arm. The issue we've got is that I've mentioned this in other videos. You can't just break any rivet you want. You have to get two inside links together so that the master link will go on. If we were to break this rivet here, we would be a half a link too long, if that makes sense. So this is not gonna work. So we're gonna have to reposition the axle so that we can get it so that we've got two inside links sitting next to each other and we can break it there. So one option is to see if we can get this to go a little bit tighter, which we can't do in this position. So we either are gonna have to move the axle forward or backwards. Now, my personal preference would be to move the axle forwards and make the chain one link shorter. And the reason for that is it gives you the ability to move the axle back to adjust it, if and when you get wear in the chain. If you go back, you kind of, on the one hand, your chain is longer, which means you could shorten it if you needed to, but you run out of adjustment room in that direction. So I'm gonna start by moving the axle forward and see if we can get this one link shorter and see if that works, see what it looks like, and we'll kind of make a full determination before we make any unreversible decisions and cut the chain. All right, so hopefully you can see the axle is moved forward now and the chain is moved a half a link back. So we've got two inside links sitting here, so this is gonna work. The axle's not pushed all the way up against the stops. There's still be room to move it forward if we had to. It's a little bit, further forward than center, and that's fine, and plenty of room to adjust back as needed. So I think this is gonna be the length that's gonna work. The other thing we can see now is just making sure that we've got clearance for the bottom of the fender here, clearance for the tire. Everything looks pretty good here. I don't see any issues. So I think we are ready to go ahead and get this chain broken. So I'm gonna mark this link with a Sharpie. That's gonna be the rivet we're gonna drive out to shorten the chain. And then we'll go ahead and get the new master link pressed on. So grab the tools for that and we'll make it happen. All right, so this is gonna kind of just fall out and that's fine. So here's the mark, the rivet I wanna do. Got my chain tool here. All right. Okay, got that set in place. Grab a couple of wrenches and we'll get this going. Okay. All right. So there's the pin we just drove out. All right. Okay, and now chain just pops apart. Got two little X-rings in there. And we've got our chain set to go at the correct length. So we got the tool reset, grab the master link, get it pressed in place. All right, that all greased up and the O-ring's on. I'm just gonna slide this onto the back side of the chain. Sorry, I'm gonna be out of view here for a sec. But we're over here because I like to spin this around to work on it here or down here. Probably down here would be the easiest. I'll get the jack out of the way. I'll reposition the camera, I guess, a little bit. So let's turn this. All right. So there's our master link, and now that I got the wheel in the right position, I can take this jack out. All right, so hopefully you can see that. Here, let me zoom in before we go any further. Got to get our plate in place here and get our tool lined up on it. And this can take a little bit of doing. The camera being in the way doesn't help matters, but I'm gonna do my best. All right, I think got it all lined up. So now we just have to press that plate in place, and it's the same procedure of tightening this down. So every tool is going to be different. This particular one is nice because it basically has a stop on it. So I can feel that change in pressure. And I know I've got the plate to where it needs to be. I've used another tool in the past, I think it's from Motion Pro, where you kind of have to just do a little bit at a time and measure, and it really sucks. So let's see how we did there. All right, beautiful. So I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see on camera, but I've got the heads poking out here, and the last step is going to be to peen them over to lock this in place. So we just want to check and make sure that this link is sitting at the same distance out as the other two. I can tell that it is, and also I know from my experience with this tool that it sets it correctly, but you can measure these with a caliper. All of our O-rings are in there. They look good. The link moves and flexes as it should. So we're good to go. Get our first one set up on it, right like that. And same procedure as before, tighten it down until it stops. Okay. Okay, and just reset the tool one more time, and we'll peen over the second rivet. And get this last one done. Okay. Slide that out of the way. Take a look at our job here. Looks good to me. All right, let me get this tool removed, and we'll check and make sure our chain is functioning properly. All right, so before I get this jacked back up to get the chain, make sure it works properly, just a triple check here that our connections are still free to move, and everything looks good. So everything's perfect. So I'm gonna get this raised back up. All right, I think we might have had a camera battery die right there at the very end, but just got this jacked back up. Our master link is here. So we just wanna make sure that this is gonna spin and operate as it should, no clearance issues. We definitely gotta get the chain tightened back up, so that's gonna be my next step. But most critically, I'm just kind of looking and making sure that the master link, I lost track of it, is going around the bends, the tighter one in particular. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't, because it moves nice and smooth, so we've got no issues. So anyway, let's get the initial tension on this chain set, and we can get going with getting this primary buttoned up. although not before we change out a whole bunch of hardware up here to match what we did on the other side. All right, the initial chain tension done, pretty close, but not totally final yet. Let's move up here, get some hardware swapped so we can go ahead and get this primary put back together. Well, with the bike side ready to go, let's go ahead and get this inner primary ready to install. I've got a couple things we gotta do. We gotta get this tube out so we can change the inner O-ring in here. Gotta pull the seal for the starter out, and we gotta get the primary bearing and the seal out here. So let's start with getting this tube out. Just one bolt holding the retainer in place. Right, and that just pops out. All right, so next I think let's flip this over, pull the main shaft seal out. Let's just pop this right out, very simple. And then to get the bearing out, there are snap rings on both sides, one here and one here. I'm gonna take both of those out. There's one. There's two. All right, with the snap rings out of the way, go ahead and get our Jim's tool on here to get this bearing pressed out. Boom. All right. All right, and there's our old bearing. Not bad. Probably had some life left in it. Not great either. It's all right. All right, last thing left to do is get this seal out. So this seal is installed this way, which means we are going to remove it this way. So we should be able to just get in here and tap this just a little bit. It's not the easiest seal in the world to get out, but it's not the hardest either. Just got to get it on the edge and just work it out. There we go. Couple swift whacks. All right, so if you can see there, that's where I was hitting it. Just kind of get it right on the edge there. It'll work itself out. All right, so that's everything removed that's gonna get removed. This can stay in place. This has already been cleaned, but I'm gonna give it one more go around of cleaning, and we'll come back over here. We'll get our new seal installed here, and we'll get our new bearing, the upgraded one-piece Jim's bearing, and new seal installed here, and we'll get this thing put on the bike. All right, so if you recall, we've got the new one-piece bearing to go in here. So this bearing is thicker across than the old one is, and that's obviously a good thing for us, a little bit more support there. But what that means is that there's only going to be one snap ring in this setup as opposed to the two that I just took out. So this is the instruction sheet that comes with that new bearing. You can kind of pause that if you need a little help understanding it. But basically, you've got your inner race on the old setup. You've got two retaining rings, one on each side, and then you've got the seal here. On the new setup, coming from the transmission side, you've got your seal. You've got a snap ring on that side, you've got the bearing itself here, and then there's nothing here on the clutch side. So basically, the race on the bearing is gonna ride right up against the clutch hub, if that makes sense. So normally when you do this bearing install, you're installing one of the snap rings first, and then you just kind of seat the bearing down to the snap ring so you get it put in the right position. In this case, you can't do that. So it's a little bit more of a process to install these because you kind of have to check as you go. So the issue there is The snap ring, like I said, is going on the back side, so over here, which means that if you were to put that snap ring in first, the bearing would have to be pressed in from this side. You don't want to do that, and here's why. If you look at the back side, hopefully this comes out on camera, there's a nice little chamfer here that's going to help to get that bearing started in that hole. On this side, there's not. It's just a clean right angle edge. So you definitely want the bearing going in this way. But the snap ring is going to be on this side, so it can't go in until after, and you've got nothing to seat the bearing against on this side. So what that means is we basically just have to put the bearing in and just kind of check and see how far it goes in and get it until it goes right past where this groove is, and then we can get it seated. Now, a little bit of a trick that I've kind of done is if you put the bearing in and press it further than it needs to go, just go beyond where you think you're supposed to be, that's fine. You can then put the snap ring in, turn the tool around, and push the bearing back the other way. So obviously the bearing will be able to move through here. It's not a big deal. You just don't want to start the bearing on this side. So hopefully that makes sense, and I'll show you how it goes. Okay, and yeah, that actually looks perfect. So we should be able to drop the snap ring right in here. Yep, we'll see. We'll see if there's any space there. If there is, I'll push the bearing back a little bit. So you can see that there. So we'll see. Let's go ahead and put that snap ring in, and if there's a gap, we'll close it. If there's not, then we'll move on to the next thing. Okay. All right, that looks good. So I'm reasonably sure that there's a little bit of a gap here, and what I want to do is I'm not going to slam the bearing into it, but I'm just going to move it just back just a little bit just so it touches. So all we've got to do that is just, like I just did before, just run that tool in the other direction. All right, so I'm just going real easy. That's it. Just so it touches. I'm not trying to put any force into it or anything like that. I don't even know what that was, maybe a turn. So that's ready for the seal. But let's look over here. I think where we're at right now should be just perfect. So I'm gonna leave it where we're at, and let's get the seal put in here, and we'll get this primary installed finally. All right, last but not least, let's get the new starter seal put in. Best thing I've found to use is a socket of the right size. So that is what we're going to attempt to do. Works for me. Let's wipe this down one more time and get it installed. All right, so with the inner primary and the drive components back in, we've got one more step to do here before we put the outer cover on and keep going, which is we're gonna give this bike a clutch refresh. So I've got a Barnett extra plate clutch kit. This is my favorite for twin cam bikes. Works really well, doesn't really have any negatives as far as I can tell or I can see. Just replaces, there's two little spacer rings in the back. You don't reuse those, gives you a little extra space. Get an extra friction plate, you get extra hold on the clutch. So we're gonna do that, and I guess I'm just gonna do that right now. So I'm gonna loosen up the bolts here, kind of go around in an even pattern, loosen up the pressure on the diaphragm spring. We'll get the old stuff pulled out, and we'll start to get the new stuff put in. All right, retainer plate out. All right, diaphragm spring out. All right, and then the next thing is the backing plate here. And if we get lucky, this will actually pull the whole clutch pack out because of all the oil that's on there. So let's see how much we can get by just pulling on this. Looks like we did pretty well. All right, that is just about everything. So what I was saying is this is actually a whole bunch of separate pieces here. So we've got that, and then we've got the clutch pack. So we've got friction rings and steel rings in here. And then, let's see, it left behind just the spacer rings, and there's a mini friction plate in the back there. Let me grab a pick, I'll pull those out, and I'll show you those last two parts. Okay, all right, so there's one of the rings we're not reusing. And we got one more and a friction plate in here that we gotta get out. Okay, there's the small friction ring. And we got one more spacer back here that's gotta come out. There we go. All right, there it is. So, all those clutch components are going in the takeoff box, and we'll get the new parts ready to go. So what I'm gonna do here is open this box up. All right, so we've got a stack of friction rings and steel rings. We're gonna prep both of these. So the friction rings are gonna get soaked in primary fluid before they go in. So we got this pretty cool deal here from 9 Finger. It's got a little rack in there, holds all the clutch plates. It's like a cereal container, really cool. So we just leave primary fluid in there, and then every time we gotta use it, just drop plates in. And then these are just gonna get cleaned off with brake clean so that they're ready to go. So I'll take care of both those things, and we'll come back and get these put in. All right, got our steels cleaned off, got the frictions soaked in the juice for a couple of minutes. So I'm just going to start putting these in. Now we're gonna start with the friction, we're gonna alternate, we're gonna end with the friction. Something new they've did, and you'll see as they go in, the first plate and the last plate, the friction plates, are a different color than the others. I guess they updated the compound on them slightly, I guess to make some kind of an improvement. I asked Barnett, I didn't really get a good answer, but in any event, that's why they look different, if you were curious. So I guess we'll just start throwing these guys in here. And as these come out of here, I'm trying not to lose fluid. I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to let these kind of shake off in here. And then after I get tired of waiting, I'm just going to give them a quick dry dab with this clean rag. We obviously soaked them so they'd get wet. I'm not trying to dry them off. I'm just trying not to have just a drippy, pory mess coming pouring out of here while we're working. So that's what I'm doing. All right. So as I put each one of these in, I'm just going to make sure that they're going in straight and there's no like burrs or rough edges or anything like that. Anything like that, if it's crooked, if there's a burr, if it doesn't move, you're going to feel that in your clutch and it's going to be a problem. So that's what we're trying to do. So I'm going to throw these in. We'll probably do a little time lapse here, and we'll show you what's next. So there's our last friction plate in place. You know you got the order right when you end with a friction plate. If it comes out wrong and you got extra stuff, or you're trying to end with a steel, you mix something up, go back in there and find it. All right, so with this on, we can start to get the pressure plate and spring and retainer plate all back installed. All right, pressure plate goes on, followed by the spring. Just gotta line that up properly. So we got holes, bolt holes in between the fingers there. And then lock plate goes on top. And we can start to get the hardware put in. All right, so just like I did taking these out, I'm gonna do them a little bit at a time so the spring gets loaded evenly. I'm going to use the gun, but don't think it's that I'm running them all the way in quickly. It's just a little faster to do it this way. All right, so those all snugged down. I'm just going to go around and torque them all to 100 inch-pounds in a cross pattern. All right, so this is totally unnecessary. The only reason I'm just going to stick this locking tool in here is because our spark plugs are out and I don't want to tighten them down. But if you were doing this on a motor that was together, the compression would be more than enough to hold 100 inch-pounds. All right, so with that all done, we got one step left to go here, which is to adjust the primary chain tension, and then we can go ahead and get this buttoned up by getting the outer cover put on. So we'll knock that out right now and be well on our way. All right, well, I think that's going to do it for this video. We got the chain kit installed, primary reassembled, and that's pretty much what we set out to do this time around. So I think we're getting real close to the end of this video. I think the next one that's coming, we should be on schedule for another one in about a week or so, and we're going to get a lot of the little dress-up pieces that are missing put back on. We've got the pipe ready to go. I'm stoked about that. We got an air cleaner yet to do, seat, got a little button up to do on the handlebars, but we are this close from finally getting this bike running again. So yeah, I mean, I'm real stoked about how this came out. The hardware looks great on this side. The chain kit looks great. Hopefully you guys are appreciating the Lyndall sprocket I talked about in the last video. I think the contrast with the gold works really well. And also, oh, kind of forgot, we got the shocks sort of put on in this video. We'll have more to come on these when we get the proper hardware in. That stuff's on the way. So yeah, I think the next video, it's not going to be one big project like the last few have been. This was like chain kit, one thing. Last one was wheels, tires, brakes. The next video, I think we're going to be doing a whole bunch of little stuff to get this bike wrapped up. So maybe the next one will be the last one. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see. You'll have to stick around and find out. So anyway, as always, thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you on the next video.